What can be said about the Star Wars franchise that hasn't been said by millions of other fan videos? From the many times my friends and I spent a summer's day of... Okay, that's hack. Let's try it again. From the many times my friends and I spent a summer's in the cool dark of Meyerland Cinema, watching Episode 4 repeatedly, up through the horribly disappointing Disney-fied cash grabs of recent years, from the first ASCII art-inspired Star Wars games of the late 70s through the original X-Wing to today, I've enjoyed watching people try to replicate that setting in a game. Enter Star Wars Squadrons. This dogfighting simulator follows the steady progression of production, quality, and technical refinement of the years, if not innovation. Want to know how this title fits into this austere lineage? Before I continue, I'd like to personally thank all those who have subscribed to the channel so far. And if you haven't yet, please consider doing so and sharing our videos with your friends. Alright, since this is a demanding title, especially when using a VR HMD with a high refresh rate, I'm going to share the specification of the system on which it was tested. I used an Intel i7-6700K running with 16 gigs on the motherboard, a GTX 1070 card, alternately driving a standard 1080p monitor or an OG HTC Vive VR system. This is a good mid-range system, wholly appropriate to represent a broad range of performance. For control, I tested both the flight stick and the Xbox gamepad, but let's go ahead and get that answer right out of the way. Flight stick, as with most flight simulators, is the preferred method. If you're not used to using one, get used to it. They're much more intuitive and immersive in the long run. As most people know, Star Wars Squadrons is playable in two different modes, VR and traditional pancake mode. Near universal opinion is that the VR mode is far more immersive, and I'd be hard-pressed to disagree. On the other hand, I disagree that playing VR bestows some inherent advantage. The game is designed to be played off its radar and tagging system, and those work very well in both modes. And while we're discussing VR, we should call out the exceptional job Motive has done in minimizing VR sickness. Teleport movements, snap turning, and vignetting are all available if you're more sensitive. Even with massive amounts of reprojection and extended play periods of flipping, rolling, and power sliding, I never once felt nauseous. But overall, if you have a VR setup and a system that can handle it, that's undoubtedly the way to play it. All the best display technology is nothing without the right art department. The assets used in Star Wars Squadrons are faithful to their movie counterparts. The landing bays and briefing rooms are fine, the characters are believable and well animated, but as a dogfighter, the stars of the show are the ship interiors. Layered on top, there are some very tasteful and judiciously used particle effects and lighting. I mean, as you zip and bob your ship around the battlefield, the sparks and smoke coming from your equipment give us subtle but persistent evidence of your condition. Lighting from distant light sources, such as nearby stars, causes convincing shadows to be cast inside your cockpit, further solidifying the illusion of place and position. I mean, if you've ever played Elite Dangerous Horizons in VR mode, you have a pretty good idea of what's in store for you. While Elite's cockpits are more detailed and expose deeper functionality more appropriate for its deep simulation gameplay, the ones in Star Wars Squadrons are minimalist and built for streamlined dogfighting. Both will give you that sense of immense scale and awe-inspiring graphics that use VR as a convincing tool of immersion rather than a gimmick. Similarly, both titles are hard on your graphics card. Pretty meshes and dynamic lighting come at a high cost. Add to that what is widely considered an issue with Squadrons, where multiple people are reporting CPU utilization pegged at 100% for extended periods of time, and you've got a beast of a title that demands a beefy setup to exploit it. Thank goodness for Steam reprojection. On to the story and the mission structure themselves. As it is customary, we are going to avoid explicit spoilers and speak in general terms. The single-player campaign starts off with a bang and a betrayal and slowly introduces the player to the basics of flying a fighter. The controls introduced in the first few missions are applicable to all ships, and appropriately, as the story commences and requires you to control a new ship, its incremental differences are highlighted and relayed in a similarly efficient manner. Over the course of the single-player campaign, you'll switch between New Republic and Empire perspectives. This design choice doesn't provide much from the narrative side, but serves as an excuse to make both sets of ships playable. But let's put it all on the table. The story, as it is a paper-thin narrative more akin to the shallow messaging and fan service of the Disney-fied era than the original trilogy. The characters, even in VR, manage to remain two-dimensional, and the plot never evolves beyond a means to introduce new play mechanics. A stock character named Admiral MacGuffin wouldn't have been misplaced. The constant perspective changes never allow you to develop a sense of agency in your personal hero's or villain's journey. In between missions, you can hang around your ship's bay listening to rambling and unimportant monologues that are intended to provide backstory to characters, but really, honestly, they just come across as filler. This is one of those occasions where you'll be happy to have VR in that you can ignore their yappiness and stare at your mute headless uniform instead. Once done, head into the briefing room for an overview of your next mission before returning to the bay, selecting preferred loadout for your provided ship. Then it's time to head back into battle. The missions you'll undertake are textbook scenarios, harkening all the way back to Wing Commander. You'll get your fill of raiding, defending, escorting, escaping, supporting, and spying missions. All of them are well designed, competently voice acted, and filled with checkpoints should things go bad, and they will. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of the missions, they all work as expected. The ensuing fights are fun and are truly the highlight of the game. The enemies on normal provide just the right amount of challenge, and ship mechanics allow for multiple playstyles, all equally viable. In this aspect, the balance really shines through, and for all the game's mediocre aspects, Motive chose the most important one on which to focus its efforts. The battles are glorious, they're immersive, and most importantly of all, they're fun. So what's next? Interestingly, EA, in contrast to its common practice, has ruled out DLC for Star Wars Squadrons, opting to take more of a CD Projekt Red approach of providing a full narrative for a set price. For once, buyers won't have to worry what DLC was left on the cutting room floor. You're going to get exactly what you pay for. That's so refreshing these days, isn't it? In the era of microtransactions and Day 1 DLC, this is just such a pleasant surprise. Let's only hope that the game's success convinces EA to adopt this more going forward. So, in summary, Star Wars Squadrons is solid and well worth the cost. It certainly won't set the world on fire, but it iterates just enough on the time-honored formula to make it worthy of a place among the best in the line. Star Wars Squadrons was developed by Motive and published by Electronic Arts. It's out today on PC and consoles for around $40, and it's worth a buy if you're into Star Wars at all, but if titles like Half-Life Alyx or Elite Dangerous haven't yet convinced you to buy a VR setup, this probably won't either. So that's our review of Star Wars Squadrons. If you've played it, what was your experience? Please leave a comment below and let us know. Also, feel free to add any questions or suggestions you might have. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell. It would be greatly appreciated and really helps out a lot. Thanks for watching.